a year of turbulence.
They have completely embarrassed the All Blacks. A record-breaking 43 points to 10.
He's missed the turn.
Oh my God,
he has missed transition.
So Hayden Wilde here has missed the transition zone.
Semi-final heartbreak for the Black Ferns. The Kiwi women's reign as world champions coming to an end with a shock defeat to the largely amateur Canadian side.
Yeah, a complete mess really in the netball world. Nolene Todora, the Kiwis coach, was stood down in September.
But there was sweet triumph.
They wanted this one desperately. The Black Fern Sevens are champions in Dubai.
Liam Lawson has secured a spot on the 2026 grid, staying with Racing Bulls as part of the wider shake-up of the Red Bull racing team.
Denied at the rim by Steven Adams, who swallowed that up. Durant goes back into Steve-O. Whoa! Steven Adams!
And this time it's Chris Wood who gets it. Nottingham Forest enjoying every minute of this first half.
Halasima beats two. He kisses, points to the sky and scores a remarkable try for the Warriors.
Oh, that's unbelievable.
There was so much hope and too much heartbreak.
The Warriors, well, their hold on the top four is slipping away.
An all-black Grand Slam drifts away into the dark London night, and England open the history books.
And Chris Wood hobbled off in the second half this morning or night time in New Zealand as they beat New Caledonia to qualify for the World Cup.
The big thing about the Warriors is they've been renowned for years about just sometimes mentally going a bit soft when the games got tight.
And the off-field drama was just as intense.
Knowles, if you're listening, we love you and we miss you and we want you back here.
What a story it's been, eh? Netball New Zealand drops coach Dame Nolene Taurua after allegations from some players of a psychologically unsafe environment. A mixture of confusion, silence, delay and eventually government intervention ensues, culminating in her reinstatement.
I'm elated to be back and it feels like game day if I'm going to be honest.
Kia ora, I'm Amanda Gillies and buckle up because today on The Detail we look at New Zealand sport's wild 2025. We review the highs and lows across the main Kiwi codes, rugby, league, netball, football, cricket, what we loved, what we didn't. And to break it all down is sports commentator and journalist Ricky Swanell. She starts by summing up the year in one sentence.
I would probably say inconsistent. That's the word that comes to mind particularly, but I would say it's been a little bit inconsistent and perhaps at times a little unconvincing.
Why inconsistent?
Okay, when we think of a sporting year so much, particularly in a non-Olympic year, we obviously had the Women's World Cup, but a non-Men's World Cup year, a lot of our attention will go to the All Blacks, and they would be, I guess, the epitome of inconsistent this year. But then I sort of thought across it a little bit more and looked, okay, we had Auckland FC arrive on the scene, utterly amazing, but didn't quite finish the job and not quite getting to the final, winning the Premier's Plate. Of course, Auckland SC doing well means the Wellington Phoenix, they didn't go so well. The Warriors, they were there or thereabouts, and then they massively dropped away in those last phases of the season, so they're inconsistent again. The Black Ferns looked $1 million at the World Cup when they played Ireland in pool play, and then were well beaten in the semi-final. So that was just kind of the way I look. But look, there's lots of great parts in there too. I think of Hayden Wilde and the year he had after a horrific accident earlier in the year, but he is absolutely dominating around the world in triathlon, particularly in that T1000 distance. You know, so there's a lot of highs to go with that inconsistency. And I also don't think probably there's been any terrible lows, at least not that I can think of off the top of my head.
Oh, I'm probably going to think of a few of the All Blacks performances.
I was going to say they probably are, actually.
Let's talk about the All Blacks because, you know, if we're going to talk inconsistency, as you said, how would you ultimately sum up or define their season?
When you look at the All Blacks, it's remarkable, really. You go back to that test against England, and had they won that, they would have ended up with a 12 wins from 14 tests record and an historic Grand Slam. Of course, they lose that. There's no Grand Slam. And then you look at a year where they suffered a record defeat to South Africa at home, and then they were beaten by Argentina for the first time ever away.
History for Los Pumas. For the first time, they beat the All Blacks in Argentina. What a moment.
I think losing to Argentina in Argentina was probably an inevitability. It's nearly happened before. But I'd say inconsistent. And the other word, though, too, and I mentioned it perhaps earlier, is unconvincing. And we're year 2 into Scott Robertson's reign as coach, and it doesn't feel like they've progressed. There's probably, and I know I've seen the word bandied around a little bit, stagnation, that haven't really gone forward. Yes, injuries are a part of that as well, but it's hard to almost see where they're going at the moment. And that's probably the concerning factor for any All Black fan, is that even some of those wins that they had weren't thoroughly convincing, and it's hard to see exactly where they're heading.
I agree. Do you think Scott Robertson is the right man for the job?
Well, look, he is the man. He's the man for the job. Whether he's the right man for the job, I don't think we'll answer, because I would be very surprised if he is not the retained All Black coach through until the next World Cup. It is just not the New Zealand way to do that. They will back him. Whether he's got his team right underneath and around him is probably the question that many people are asking, especially with Jason Holland moving on now as well. So Scott Robertson, his record at the Crusaders is unimpeachable. He was the clamoured for coach by the public, and now we're having to see that, you know what, coaching at international level is a whole lot different to being a really good Super Rugby coach. So whether we think he's the right man for the job, I don't see it changing regardless. And who that next coach is also the question. So we'd love to be on a fly on the wall at the end of season review. For sure.
How yes.
Yeah. I would expect to see that we are going to see some changes, some rescoping, perhaps different people brought in to that coaching setup.
I want to talk players then, Ricky. Which players do you think have stepped up? For me, I think the stars have been Ardie Savea and Cam Roigard, and I'd love your views on this. And I want to know sort of which areas, and I put this politely, may need some urgent attention ahead of next year.
Yeah, look, I think those two have been absolute standouts. Ardie Savea played 80 minutes and I think about 11 of the test matches. He's the heart and soul of that team. You'd almost say he's the beating heart of New Zealand rugby, the way he carries himself. And you look to it, the season he had in Super Rugby with Moana Pasifika and what he did there. Cam Roigard has become the most important player put in that team sheet, and that probably speaks to some uncertainty and I wouldn't say a lack of depth at halfback. I think there's some young players coming, but Noah Hotham being injured, we haven't had a chance to see him at that level. We've got a lot of excitement about young Dylan Pledger, but I think there's a big gulf between Cam Roigard and the rest. Fabian Holland, what a season he had in his debut season for the All Blacks.
Just saw the awesome news that Fabian Holland has won the Breakout Rugby Player of the Year. That is awesome, and I do think it's richly deserved.
I remember watching him run out for that first test against England in Dunedin and thinking, he looks exactly like what I want an All Black lock to look like.
Yeah.
He's big, he's rugged, he's got everything, and he has got an engine, 80-minute performer, time and again, never shirks any duties. I think he has been outstanding. And the other one I would mention too is Quinn Tupaia. Became very important for Scott Robertson. His career was nearly over a couple of years ago after an horrific injury, was outstanding in Super Rugby. So those are the ones. And then, look, I think the worrying thing is around that back line, it doesn't feel like anyone's really sure who the best wingers are. Caleb Clark had a great end to the season, had a few injury worries as well. Leroy Carter came into the All Blacks after a really successful Sevens career, but is he the long-term answer as an All Black winger? Not sure. I think he definitely adds value. But it's just that makeup of the back line and what the best combinations are and who the best personnel is really challenging at the moment.
Here's a big call here. Is it time for Beauden Barrett to step down and retire? I mean, he will be 35 next year.
I don't think, and I've always stood really firm in this belief, that it is not up to any of us to ever put an athlete into retirement. I think that is something that they do themselves whenever they want that to be, and the consequences be damned if they play on longer than perhaps they could or should. So I don't think we should retire. And I think 35, we talk about it, but sports science is so different now. We get to a point, someone hits 30 and you're like, oh, they're on the downward spiral, even for those those of us well over that. The way Beauden Barrett as a professional, the way he looks after himself is exceptional. Look, he would be the first to admit, particularly that test match against England, where he didn't have a great, he had some really good moments, and he's probably captures the entire All Blacks really, and particularly that backline. Great moments, also inconsistent. I guess first five though is that other area where there are some questions and concerns. Richie Mo'unga coming back, is that the answer again? Should they have given Ruben Love more time in that jersey, in that chair to drive the team around? But no, look, I think if anybody has the ability to bounce back from an up and down season, it would be Beauden Barrett.
And look, I think Tom Brady was 45 when he finally stepped down, so there's a bit of time there. What about his brother Scott? We love him, but is it time for him to step aside as captain and just focus on his game?
That might be Scott Robertson's biggest decision.
Mm-hmm.
There was, I guess, raised eyebrows at his selection, but as All Blacks captain, the problem is if you're the captain of an All Blacks team that isn't performing, then your own performances come into question too. And you think of the likes of a Todd Blackadder, Tane Randall. Over the years, there's been All Black captains who haven't always commanded their own place in the team. I don't think we're at that point with Scott Barrett, but the fact of the matter is that when Ardie Savea has worn that captain's armband, the All Blacks have been a better side, and whether that's to do with that, he is that follow me kind of leader. Perhaps Scott Barrett, the way he leads and everybody does it differently, doesn't necessarily translate to the All Black environment. I can't believe I just used the words All Blacks environment. And yeah, I think that is absolutely something that Scott Robertson is going to have to factor in if they are to get the best out of Scott Barrett as a player as well.
So that's the All Blacks coach there. I want to go to the Silver Ferns coaching drama. Gosh, that has obviously dominated many headlines.
Let's return to the breaking news. We've had that Dame Nolene Taurua will not be coaching the Silver Ferns for the upcoming series against South Africa.
One former Ferns captain saying it's a sad day for the sport, another labelling it as an embarrassment.
It's a sad day for Netball New Zealand not to have the back of one of the best coaches that we've had.
Your take on it, how damaging was that for the brand and how that played out?
Massively damaging. I've been in and around netball for 20 odd years as a reporter now. That's where I really cut my teeth as a baby reporter back in the day, and obviously still get to commentate the game. Every sport has their dramas, but this one for netball, on the back of what hasn't been a great year anyway, there's been issues around their broadcast deal, uncertainty around their competition, clearly some not great morale going on at headquarters with a high turnover of staff as well. And then you add this on top of it and the handling of the situation, and it all adds up to a pretty grim year for Netball New Zealand, saved by their players.
The Kiwis have had a really busy international season. They've just beaten South Africa 3-0 without her. They've beaten the Aussies twice in the last couple of weeks to take that to a 4-all and a decider that went to extra time. So they've just beaten Scotland as well in a 2-game warm-up. So it seems to me that under adversity, they've come out hugely on top.
And I think the players were really unfairly maligned in this whole situation with Dame Nolene Taurua. And they showed that for those who want to use the words like woke and snowflake generation and they can't handle anything tough, well, I'll show you how tough they were in that test match in Hamilton when they came out and beat Australia after such a tough time over there, then came and did it again, then went to England and won a 3-test series there. That's pretty tough for those players who I think were mentally and physically pretty cooked after that England series. So I don't think Dame Nolene Taurua has covered herself in glory in any of this. Netball New Zealand certainly hasn't. The court of public opinion, without enough facts, sort of hung, drawn and quartered everybody going. So, and I don't think it's the end of it. I think we're going to see more to come on this from the Netball New Zealand perspective as well. But it hasn't been a good look. Fortunately, as I say, for them, the Silver Ferns saved the day on the court.
Oh, they were incredible. Do you think, though, we're going to see the same CEO at the helm next year, or major changes there?
It sounds like the netball community is demanding change.
Could have a coup at Netball New Zealand, various zones, they call them zones. They're moving to force a vote of no confidence in the CEO and the board. You need 3 of the 5 zones around the country to call the special general meeting.
I see just in the last few days some words from some of their zones, and they're your stakeholders, right, for the game. And I think it would be very difficult when you're the leader of an organisation to, after the year that they have had, to prove that you are the person to take them forward forward and beyond this. We've got a Commonwealth Games next year, a World Cup the following year. And so if you're Jenny Wiley, the CEO, is she the right person to lead the organisation into a new future, to draw a line under this? You'd have to say no, because if Dame Nolene Totoa, she is still the head coach. And I still say there's an if she comes back into this coaching team in the new year, how is that relationship, the head coach of your national team, your relationship with your CEO and your board, who are also in the firing line? You have to be honest, none of these, this coaching thing was new, but anybody around the sport has been able to see the issues around broadcaster and around the ANZ Premiership coming for quite a long time. So where have the board been to let things get as bad as they have?
Another code courting off-field headlines and drama this year, cricket.
What's going on? Yeah. No one knows. It's chaos.
The New Zealand cricket CEO faces allegations of working to actively undermine a bid by a private consortium to establish a new T20 franchise competition. It's been a hot topic for sports shows.
From the looks of it, there's a lot of very unhappy provincial people who don't believe that Scott Wienig, who's the CEO currently, quite has a handle on what's going on. Doesn't want to run too fast at something new and fangled in the T20 space. We thought in the last AGM this information would come out that he's been drop-kicked. If you haven't got the support of all your organisations, it's very, very hard to keep on going.
I have a feeling we're probably going to end up talking about cricket off the field just like we have with netball this season. And I think Netball New Zealand are going to be the happiest people going about it, with cricket taking the spotlight. Be like, hold my beer. Hey, Netball New Zealand having trouble here, hold my beer. Yeah, it feels like we're going to have a lot of that bubbling under the surface for this entire summer. It's not necessarily the sort of thing that will affect the team on the field in the way that the Netball New Zealand thing has, because that direct impact of coaching. But yes, certainly off-field, all sorts of appears to be going on, and the reporting on that has been bubbling away from all sorts of quarters as well. So it's this kind of thing that the players are going to get asked about. I don't think it's going to necessarily, as I say, be detrimental for them as well. I mean, the cricket season, the cricket summer, they just sort of roll on, don't they? And the various bilateral series and the different formats that they'll be playing is all building towards the T20 World Cup, of course, as well. I mean, just at the moment playing the West Indies, that's only really the start of the Test Championship for them. So it's a long, long old season ahead, certainly with eyes on that World Cup coming up.
It'll be a watch this space. And I want to know for next year, Ricky, is it the Warriors' year? Is it finally going to be our year?
I mean, we can say it. We'll say it anyway.
We'll front foot this and own it.
Oh, why not? Why not? I mean, again, inconsistent is the word, isn't it? And hit a couple of massive injuries for them in the season with Mitch Barnett and Luke Metcalf. And one of them is bad enough, let alone two of them at that stage of the season. So is it their year? Oh, gosh. I mean, you'd still say no, but like large parts of this season, they had the capacity to surprise. But the NRL is so cutthroat. It is such a tough competition to win, and as evidenced by the fact that they never have. But I've got to admire that faithful that have been going out there to Mount Start Stadium year after year, staying up every Saturday night for late games in Australia, and still turn up for that team over and over again. And that is actually credit to the Warriors and what they've built, and the culture and the goodwill and the way they embrace the people in the community, that they have people stick by them thick and thin, when they could have well and truly jumped off the ship a long time ago.
Speaking of staying up late, I certainly did for the Black Ferns in the Rugby World Cup. Man, that was heartbreaking. What went wrong? Did sort of Canada just put out a stronger team, or are we regressing? I hate even to say that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say regress. I'd say go back to what I used with the All Blacks, and that would be stagnating while the rest of the women's game is moving on. Canada absolutely played the lights out. The Black Ferns were thoroughly outplayed in that semi-final in Bristol, which I was fortunate enough to be there for. And this Canadian team, they've been number 2 in the world. Remember, they'd beaten the Black Ferns. They'd drawn with the Black Ferns the last couple of years. Yes, their overall program isn't what you'd be described as a professional setup, but every single player in that squad is professional, and they didn't lack for anything that they needed. They didn't have the same level of resource as other sides. But Canada are utterly world world class, and they showed that. And look, you go back and ask questions of the decisions that were made for the New Zealand team, and I had a big chat to their co-captain, Luahei Demant, a week or two ago, talking about no, they didn't play enough games. And this is all hindsight, and hindsight's wonderful, isn't it? They didn't play enough games in the lead up. She didn't feel they had consistency of selection going into those knockout games, that the team was still chopping and changing. The injury to Georgia Miller is obviously a factor in there. But look, I hope it's a really good wake-up call for New Zealand rugby about the level of planning and resource and everything that goes into these World Cup campaigns and what other squads and nations are doing. And you only have to look at England because they are miles in front with their resourcing of the women's game, of where we need to be and what the Black Ferns need to do to grow and to be back to the top of the world, because there's no doubt World Cup class players. And to go back to something that Ruahei said, and it points to the All Blacks, she believes that we're not innovating as New Zealand rugby anymore on the field, and she says that's across the men's and women's game, that New Zealand rugby were and has been leaders for so long in so many facets, and she's just not seeing that at the moment, which is really interesting from, your national captain making such a pointed observation like that.
Oh, fantastic. The girls, though, they did come back brilliantly. Some of those players for the Sevens in Dubai. You were there. Tell us what happened, not only for the girls, but also for the boys.
You like to think you've seen a few things, and all weekend I was like, well, I can't see New Zealand winning this. And of course they then win and go and win both. And so what do I know? The women were beaten by the USA. Look, they look pretty scratchy, to be fair, bringing in some new young players who have not really been Sevens players, but Georgia Miller, Stacey Waka, Teresa Setefano, Reese Pody Lane had no pre-season Sevens because they came from World Cup, had a break. Georgia had surgery on her thumb, and then they were basically on the plane again. And some of those players really did carry the can. Georgia Miller is just on a whole different stratosphere than any other Sevens player and probably any other female rugby player in the world.
Georgia Miller, there's a reason she's the World Rugby Sevens Player of the Year. She might have even surprised herself with that bit of footwork.
With some of the things she do, and she at times, I think, almost dragged them into the final. Australia had looked so good, but just didn't fire a shot. New Zealand got up in their face, and it was quite stunning, actually. They had a couple of chances early, Australia, and then just couldn't get a thing going. And they are so much strength, so much depth in their team, and it looked brilliant. And then for the guys, well, thrilled for them. They've made some big calls on selection and have let go some pretty senior old stages from that squad now. Had their worst ever season last year. A lot of people, I always laugh, I never get a call about Sevens when the teams win, but if they lose, I'll certainly get a call and ask to go and chat on radio or talk to somebody about it. And I certainly got a few questions about the men's team last season, but they were simply superb. Couple of young guys came in and flourished, and those who'd been around a wee while, Brady Rush was absolutely brilliant, and a fabulous result for them in a very cutthroat, ruthless competition to start the season.
And our football boys, how did 2025, as in soccer boys, how did 2025 treat them, and also sort of ahead of the World Cup next year?
Yeah, that's the biggie, isn't it?
Yeah.
What a massive year to be going to a Football World Cup again for New Zealand. Yes, they've expanded teams, but there's nothing quite like seeing New Zealand football playing on that stage. I think a lot of the talk around football was, as I say, with Auckland FC and the way that they have come in the past season into the A-League and done things differently from the business of sport perspective. And I think that has been really good to see. Just kind of goes to show what happens when you've got a group of owners who are really obviously successful in what they have done in their other lives and want to drive and bring something new, and also aren't beholden necessarily to the governing body or anything like that. They can try things and break things and get things done on the way. So, yeah, I think that they've added a real new dimension, not just to football, but to the sporting landscape in New Zealand, which is really cool to see.
Right, I started with a tough question. I'm going to end with a tough question. Ricky, your top sporting moment for 2025. Give it to me.
Oh no. I was going to say, we've got all the way to without mentioning Liam Lawson. We should probably chuck him in as well. Speaking of, he's probably been the most talked about New Zealand athlete anywhere in the world this year.
And he's just made F1, hasn't he, for next year?
Relief for Liam Lawson after official confirmation his Formula One career is safe for next year. Red Bull has confirmed that Lawson will retain his seat at Racing Bulls.
Totally got the drive again, which is great. I mean, probably a little bit overkill in terms sometimes of the reporting. The man would break a nail and someone would run a story, but I think that goes to show how much we and like the football to have them on the world stage in these global glamour sports like F1 is very, very cool. Sporting moment of the year. This is a really hard one because the sporting moment of the year ends up with England winning. But for me and in the work I do, it's pretty hard to go past seeing 85,000 fans turn up at Twickenham for a women's rugby game in the World Cup final. And not only that, the packed houses that they had across these stadiums, the way that tournament was run. And yes, that final did result in England winning the World Championship and World Cup, and unfortunately New Zealand not being in the final. But as a measure of how the game has changed, if things are done right where women's sport can go, it's pretty hard to top that as a moment, at least off the field, if not on it.
That's it for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and New Zealand On Air. Thank you to Ricky Swanell. This episode was produced by Alexia Russell and engineered by Mark Chesterman. I'm Amanda Gillies. Matua.